When we go to glue this together, make sure those X's are on the same side. What I did with mine is I put my name where I wrote my name and identified what the projects were. I put that to the inside so I don't have to do so much sanding. If for some reason you were to have some marks from the factory, say it's some blue dye or it is some of the black marking they use at the factory to identify the wood, if you have that on your project, it's easier to sand off pencil mark than that stuff. So we'll put that to the inside, leave the pencil marks out in that case. Now all we're going to do is we're going to put glue on our ends of our side pieces. We are going to put our project together as such. We are going to then clamp it with a wood clamp. When you're using one of these wood clamps, they are kind of tricky to use. Because the two screws are opposite each other, you want to spin it like a bicycle. I'm going to knock my project over. You want to spin this like a bicycle. And then you can open it, close it, make it bigger or smaller. You want your two jaws of the vise to be parallel all the time. You don't want to have them at a funny angle like this because it's only going to be pinching then at the point. If they're parallel, you'll be pinching across the entire flat of the two jaws. Wood glue is water-based, so you can wash it off when it's wet with soap and water. If it dries, you can peel it off like snakeskin. But we are going to use our finger to smooth out the wood glue here. You don't need a lot of glue here. The more glue you have, the more mess you'll make. Also, do not set your projects down with the glue side down. You'll get glue all over the table and make a mess. When you're done applying your glue, wiping it off with your finger, you might have some left over. You can wipe it off on your project. Make sure you wipe it off on the inside edge. That way, if you have any excess, it spills over to the inside, not the outside. That way we don't have to look at it later. So wipe it off on that inside edge. Now we can go ahead and glue this together. Make sure as you're gluing it, everything is flush. You can see mine is overhanging here a little bit. Tap that in. If you need to go get a hammer, you can go get a hammer, tap that in. Make sure it's flush on all of our sides. If we cut it and sanded everything squarely, then as we're gluing this together, we shouldn't have to worry about it being out of square. If for some reason your project is really twisted and this side's a lot higher than this side, chances are your boards are not cut square. If they're off by a little bit, that is okay, because we're going to be sanding this all flush later on. Once you have it all in there snug, I don't have my vise completely tight yet. I'm going to take a square just to go around it and make sure everything is still square. If it's not square anymore, we can still tweak it a little bit while it's wet. I got everything fairly square here. So now we're going to tighten up our vise. And because our boards have a little bit of a warp and bow to them, I have a bigger gap here on top. I'm going to grab another vise and tighten it up here on top as well. There we go. We'll let this dry overnight, and then we'll come back and work on this another day. For now, I'm not going to waste time letting glue dry. We're going to push this to the side and work on the next project. Here we have the glued together Gumball machine. We are going to sand everything smooth and flush on the belt sander. A problem we're going to have when sanding is we want everything to be nice and square. So when we sand it, we have to hold it flat on a known flat surface. And we're going to sand this edge square to our known flat surface. Don't put this edge down because we don't know, this might be sanded or might be glued together at a little bit of an angle. So this side we know is flat because it's one continuous piece of wood. We're going to put that side down, sand on this side. We want to sand with the grain here. You see the lines of the little pieces of wood here. That is the grain. We want to sand with the grain always. If you sand against the grain, you're going to have a crisscross pattern, and it's going to look funny. Always sand with the grain. So here the belt goes this way, so we're gonna sand with the grain. Flip it over end for end, keeping that same bottom against the table. That way they are parallel. We're gonna sand this one with the grain. And then, if these are not flush, which mine are off by a little bit, we're going to sand this end, keeping this side against the table. Same thing with this side, keeping that same edge always against the table, so everything is square to that one edge. Sand it a little bit here, just sand it a little bit, and you can still see there's a lip here yet. Still gets caught. We're gonna sand until that lip goes away. We also shouldn't see any glue chunks on here. There we sanded all of our edges. We're going to sand until we do not see any more glue on the surface. If there's still glue, we want to keep sanding. That means it's not flush. So again, there's no little glue chunks squirting out. I know that it is flush. And then we also just cleaned up this surface so it sits flat. Flipped it over, we did this side, and I made it so this side sits flat. You can see I didn't sand all the way the whole surface. You still see my pencil mark here. I could go a little bit farther to clean that up, but I don't want to take too much off because then my slide will not slide through that channel. We're going to sand this side by hand as well as this side by hand. We don't want to make anything not square. We got to keep it all square.